Red caps are fae that hang out typically in ruins and faraway places, out of the way places that most people probably don't go. And they lay in wait for a traveler or a lost person or whatever, another faeness potentially, to come by, and they take care of that person. Okay. And they dip their cap in the blood of their victims. And that's where they get the red cap from.
A Kodega is a guide and a storyteller, escorting you through the night, lighting the way, warding off thieves, ghosts, demons, and other oddities. Along the journey, his companions would often share with him the most curious of stories that he'd record in his codex. Perhaps you just might find yourself traveling with a Kodega and sharing one of yours. Click that like. Yeah! If you're new here, subscribe and have the bell hit for notifications to stay up to date on all of the new content. There are whispers of ancient beings hidden in the twilight between this world and the next, their presence felt in the flicker of a candlelight or the sudden rustle of leaves. Some call them nature's spirits, others see them as tricksters or guardians of forgotten realms. Tonight, we step beyond the veil to explore the world of the Fae, creatures both enchanting and dangerous, who have shaped folklore across the ages. But beware, these aren't the gentle fairies of bedtime stories. They are far, far older and far more dangerous. Their magic can twist the mind, ensnare the soul, and those who wander too far into their realm may never return the same, or may never return at all. That's where I come in. I'm Rai, the Kodega, your guide through the mysterium that is our world. Tonight, we got a fantastic guest, Monica Frank Rollins, and she's going to lead us through this strange, spellbinding world of the Fae, and hopefully we'll be able to unravel some more of this lore and have a better understanding by the end of this evening. All right, everyone, so just a reminder, you can always find me on Facebook or Instagram, and of course, I'm on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and all those other audio sites. If you want to support the show, you can make your way to my Patreon or become a member of the YouTube channel, and thanks to all my members. Now, what's next? Well, if you or anyone in your family's had an experience with a dog man, if so, I would love to hear from you. So you can send me an email about your experience at codexofcuriosities@gmail.com. And of course, I'm not just looking for just dogman experiences. If you had any strange experiences that defy explanation, feel free to send them in to me. And just make sure you put the subject line experience. All right. Without further ado, let's bring Monica to the stage. Monica, how are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. It's a beautiful night, and I'm looking forward to a great conversation.
Me too. I love to share my knowledge. So
excellent.
Hopefully I've got something that, you'll be entertained by.
I think so. I definitely will, and we'll start with the Fae, and if our conversation goes in other directions, it goes that way. Monica, why don't you tell our listeners and viewers a little bit about yourself and where they can find you?
So my name's Monica, and I started out in the cryptid world, actually. I've been a Bigfoot researcher for a little over 20 years, wow. But I have been a student of the strange and unusual my entire life. I've had weird things happen to me since I was a child, and I've always been drawn to the paranormal and, anything odd is as far back as I can remember. And I've had strange experiences, off and on my entire life. So it led me into Bigfoot, which led me into other things, which led me into Fae. I've been interested in Fae my whole life. When I was 10 years old, I was gifted a book. Actually, I have it right here. I was gifted
perfect.
this book by my stepfather's mother, and it's got some amazing illustrations in it, and it describes all the different kind of Fae. And that really started my journey into learning about them and my interest in them, and really understanding that, they're not all kind, they're not all nice. Everybody thinks that just because they're these pretty little delicate looking things, and not all of them are. Not all of them are. And even the cute little delicate things will bite your finger.
Yeah, not the nicest kind of thing, and that's fantastic. Like I love those books. I didn't own, but I always took out books from the library, very much like that. Like on giants and dragons and everything else, and I was just fascinated by it. And like you as well, I had a lot of experiences when I was younger. Now, when you were younger, was there any experiences that were related to Fae, or was it just this draw to the Fae? Just in general, like it's just something that you just felt?
I didn't have any experiences explicitly with Fae. It was just something I was drawn to. And when I was gifted this book, that really opened the door to it.
Of course.
And then of course, Willow came out, of course, but Legend with Tom Cruise. That is heavy in Fae lore. So anybody, child of the 80s who's, seen it understands. And, kids these days, gosh, I really encourage anybody who hasn't seen it to go take a look at it.
It is a fascinating, like amazing. I don't know how many times I've watched Legend, and it was one of those ones that I think slipped underneath the radar a little bit, but in my opinion, it's a classic. And then you said Willow as well. Of course, Willow was amazing as well, but Legend was. It has so much to it. So much.
I mean, it's so layered with just different Fae. And one of the first, so you saw my shorts, right? So on my YouTube channel and my other social media channels, I do little shorts. And I do them mainly about the Fae. Now, my YouTube channel is about everything, but my shorts are specifically about Fae. And one of the first ones that I did was Jenny Greenteeth, which is a water spirit. And she is featured pretty prominently at one point in Legend. And I don't think a lot of people knew that. Her name is not Jenny Greenteeth in the movie, but the creature that, Jack's coming towards the castle to save the princess. Yep. And this, nasty looking green witch pops out of the water, and that's
the big claws, and it's scraping his shield. Yes. I have not forgotten that.
And her name in the movie is Meg Mucklebones, but she is fashioned after Jenny Greenteeth.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Like there's so much folklore, and some people are like, oh, they're just stories. Like, no. There's so much truth to these stories that I think we've lost the ability to properly pass on stories now we just believe them to be stories, but generations and generations ago, this was how we kept our history. This is how we kept ourselves safe.
Absolutely. I believe that there is just there's a grain of truth to everything. There is, I believe anyway. Do I think that, there was Meg Mucklebones crawling out of every pond? No, probably not. But there was something going on, and it wasn't just people falling into the ponds. It wasn't just a warning to stay away from the water. I think that there was likely, on occasion, there was something going on. Yes. That absolutely, started these rumors.
All right. So if you could talk about one of the most interesting ones, which one would it be? And let's go there.
Ooh, one of the more interesting ones. So, okay. So there's an interesting one that I haven't spoken about yet. That is, it's scary. Like it freaked me out
Excellent,
as a
excellent.
kid.
This is the spot for it. Yes.
So, and it's been a minute since I've thought about it, but it's been popping in my head in and out because for some reason around Halloween, it
Mm.
it pops into my head. So that is the Doulahan. So it is a headless creature. And I'm
Okay.
trying to remember the story because what I remember mostly about this is that it uses a spine as a whip.
Okay.
And
Wow.
it rides at night on a black horse. Gosh, I'm just butchering this because it's been so long. But
Now
the
we're
image I have in my head, it's all black.
yeah.
He's headless. He uses the spine
Yeah.
to blind his victims, and he's riding on a black steed, sometimes a headless black steed, and yeah, he's obviously not something that you want to encounter
No,
in
and
in the
of
dark.
course, and I'm sure everybody who's listening is like, "Oh, this sounds so much like the Headless Horseman." Is that kind of loosely based on that?
You know, it may be the headless horseman. I think we all know the story, you know, the Prussian soldier who lost his head.
Yes.
Um, two different things, but similar. You know, there's headless stories, I think, in like folklore all over the place. There's always somebody headless on a county road somewhere due to whatever extenuating circumstances cause them to lose the top part.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And you know, I think I might have jumped the gun though, but why don't you tell us a little bit what the Fae are? What is the Fae in general? If you could sum that all up.
So, you know, I believe that the Fae are physical creatures, right? I think some people think that they're probably spirits. I think they're physical. I think that I believe in a layered universe, like a
Okay.
multi-universe. I believe that we're stacked on top of each other.
Yeah.
And I think that the Fae are beings that have the ability to pop in and out of realms. Um, and you hear a lot about people being taken into the Fae realm, right? Where
Yes.
time moves a lot differently than it does in our realm. Like you don't cross into fairy rings, you don't eat food from the Fae. I mean, there's a lot of rules you don't do. Um, or else you'll get drawn into the Fae realm. There's also Tir na Nog, right, which is the land of beauty and youth. Um, and it's all Fae realm. So that's what I think. I think that they're just physical beings that have the ability to come in and out of our world and their world.
Okay.
And they have obviously come, you know, manifesting from somewhere not here. They have abilities that we don't.
Of course. Of course. Now that you're saying like don't take food and of course the fairy rings. I've heard the fairy rings before. It's like don't go into a fairy ring or don't walk into a
Mhm.
fairy ring. What about gifting? Like this was one of my previous Walter Bosley said he was sure that he had gifted a Tudanan. I think that was what we talked about before, the Tudanan. Yes, he had gifted them or one of them, he believes what it was. He gifted them like a pass to Disneyland. And he feels that it was kind of what set him off on his journey, that he was kind of like maybe a little bit special. You know, it might have been something like that.
Well,
Yeah.
I wouldn't willingly make any deals with the Fae personally,
Yeah.
just because they are very particular.
Mm-hmm.
They are easily offended. They are looking for loopholes. They're notorious for they're sticklers for rules. They're always looking for loopholes. You really shouldn't say thank you to strangers, to people you don't know, because you don't know who is and is not a Fae. And to say thank you is to imply that they did a favor for you. And they could think, well, now you owe me. I did something for you. You owe me something now. And I certainly don't leave welcome mats on my front porch or it's very popular now to put the big welcome signs out, especially in fall, on your front porch. That none of that's happening at my house because that's a loophole. That's a loophole.
I talked about this multiple times with my audience. I say, do not do not put a welcome mat out. Like, isn't that a loophole? We'll say for like vampires. I think, you need to
Sure.
welcome a vampire in. Isn't a welcome mat you just kind of putting
Yeah.
it out there saying, yeah, well, welcome, come on in.
Come on in.
Welcome. Exactly. So I actually have unwelcome mats, or you are not welcome in. I sell them on my Printify store.
Mine don't say anything. I think right now my fall mat says give thanks, or, if it's Halloween, it might say like go away.
Fair enough. Yeah.
But I mean, I wouldn't willingly like enter into a bargain, which would be gifting a fae. As much as I love them, the little fairy houses, and a lot of people build them for their children, or they put them, in like they build fairy gardens and things like that around their homes. That's inviting them into your space. And I'm not a fan of that. I mean, they're cute, and I've built them before, but I'll give them away. If you want them, you can have them, because not everybody believes in fae, and I respect that. And if people like them, that's great. You can have it if you feel comfortable. I don't think that it's a good idea, but if you want it, you can have it. And I just personally don't really want to participate in anything that is knowingly bringing them around me or entering into any kind of bargain or agreement with them, just for my own, protection.
I totally agree. I think that's a very smart thing to do, is to not be gifting. And I've seen that a lot, where not with the fae, but with other creatures as well. People like to gift, and I don't know where you stand on that one, but I personally say no, I'm not going to be putting out peanut butter or other things for anything else. And
well, I mean, you don't know what the intention of anything is. You can get the feeling of the intention of something, but you're lulling yourself potentially into a false sense of security.
Yes.
And I don't think it's safe, personally.
Me neither.
I mean, I've done research for a lot of things for a lot of years, and at the end of the day, it is my personal opinion that the creatures in the woods are animals, and they will act as such. And you can gift all you want, but at the end of the day, they're an animal.
And I think I've heard some, I don't want to say horror stories, but some very crazy stories when they stop gifting, then things get crazy, because it's like, where is this bargain? We have this agreement. Yeah. And
well, I mean, it's just like a bear that gets used to being fed by humans. What happens? It comes in and it gets more aggressive, because it's like, hey, where's my sandwich bread, or where's whatever it is they've been tossed on the regular. They become dependent on that.
Yeah, exactly. I noticed that there was a fae that I had read about, was like that you had written about, was like the red hat or something, like that wears a red hat. What is that one?
So red caps.
That's it.
So red caps were the fae that I was, unnecessarily terrified of as a child.
Fair enough. Okay.
Which was a little ridiculous, because I never really hung out in the places where they would be haunting, let's say. So red caps are fae that hang out typically in ruins and faraway places, out of the way places that most people probably don't go. And they lay in wait for a traveler or a lost person, or whatever, another faeness potentially, to come by, and they take care of that person. And they dip their cap in the blood of their victims, and that's where they get the red cap from. Wow. So yeah, okay. So I think in typical lore, they're like 3 to 4 feet tall. Okay. The stories I was told as a kid, they were taller. But a lot of the writings that, I've found, they're usually 3 to 4 feet tall. Any way you cut it, though, I did. I mean, I don't want to run into one.
I don't want to mess with one of those.
No, no. But I did see at one point. I did see at one point in my research a little person. Right. So this thing that I saw
Okay.
was 2.5 feet tall, and it was dressed in muted colors. And so like a natural dye, like let's say you took
Okay.
plant dyes or beet juice or things like that to dye your clothes. And it did have a red cap on, but I don't feel like this was a red cap.
Okay.
So I don't feel that all fae with a red hat are red caps. So I think that that's where a lot of people, because I've mentioned this encounter that I've had before, and a lot of people in my chat rooms are telling me, "Oh, no, Monica, you saw a red cap. Oh, that's so dangerous." Because I was genuinely freaked out when I saw this thing.
Where did you see this, and when did you see this?
So I saw this in East Texas.
Okay.
It was probably 2013 probably about 2013.
Mm-hmm.
And I was doing a little research expedition with a group of women, and we were on our way back to camp. And it was an area that I frequented for research. And it's an established campground, but where I had the ladies set up was a portion of the campground that was separated from the main area.
Okay.
So we had this little roundabout to ourselves, or like 5 sites that were completely isolated from everybody else. And we were actually on our way back to the campsite. It was like 1 or 2 in the morning. I was in the back of my friend's truck. She was driving. She was talking to another lady in the front seat. And I was just, kind of like looking out the window as we're driving back to camp. And there was some clear-cut grass, I'm guessing 10 feet to the forest line. And movement caught my eye, and, I pay attention. And there's this little dude, like I said, 2.5 feet tall, wearing, like natural colored, like brown, green, like dirty, but not like muddy, just, well-worn clothes. Yes. And he had a red hat on. It wasn't pointy. It was, I remember it was red, but I want to say it was like folded over. I remember he had the grooves in his face. He was not friendly looking at all. And I remember thinking, oh, like, I don't want him to notice me. But in the same turn, I'm thinking, am I hallucinating? Holy cow. And I'm, telling my friend in the front seat, I'm like, holy cow, are you seeing this? Are you seeing this?
Yeah.
And I'm hopping around, like looking, because we continue to drive. She was engrossed in her conversation, did not pay any attention to me flipping out in the back seat.
Oh, no.
And so she kept going. We weren't going fast.
Yeah.
But, I was looking, and I looked back. It was still there walking. Thank goodness it did not look over, because I was concerned it would pay attention and notice that I noticed it. Because that is one thing I don't want, is any kind of fae noticing me.
And follow you back home, follow you back to your campsite.
But it was walking in the direction of our camp, which was already upsetting. Yeah. So we continue on. I lose sight of it. It's walking in the direction of our camp, which again, I was not happy about. And we get back to camp. Unfortunately, my campsite was the first one you would come to when you came into camp. Yeah. And at the time I was sleeping in the back of my SUV, and I just remember jumping in the back and thinking, please let me fall asleep right away. Please let me fall asleep. And please let me not have to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, because I am not getting out of this. I am not getting out of this SUV. And I don't want to wake up with this, little face pressed against the window looking at me.
Right.
And thankfully I fell asleep pretty quick and I did not wake up. So I didn't see any little tiny handprints or anything.
Yeah, I was going to ask if was there any imprints or anything like that on your vehicle? Like the face wise, was it really like human looking, or did it look maybe like elvish or something like that? I don't know, like, or roundish, or
it was rounded, but Fae come in all shapes and sizes, right? They're not all pointy and fair and pretty. I mean, all of them are pretty ugly. Um, it was blunt, round, ruddy. The skin seemed thicker to me. It didn't look like our skin. It seemed like a
Okay.
little bit thicker skin.
Yeah.
And I remember the nose was definitely more blunt, not bulby, but a little more, it's hard to describe. It wasn't hooked, but it wasn't a bulb either. But I mean, the skin seemed thicker and kind of ruddy.
Okay. I understand.
And he
I
wasn't,
understand.
I mean, he just had a real determined look on his face. And he was, I mean, he didn't have a friendly expression.
Yes. Wow. I wonder how many times we've been watched by the Fae and we are oblivious and we don't actually see it.
I wonder that myself, and I wonder why I saw it. And I wonder if anybody else could have seen it, because I don't know that everybody can.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes maybe they slip up and you see them. Sometimes maybe they're hopping in and out of our reality and you just happen to be at the right place at the right time and you see them. I don't know if some people just are wired, because I believe in energy and vibrations and frequencies and things like that. I don't know if I was running on the right frequency at that exact moment. I don't know.
Yeah, I actually agree with you. Like maybe they vibrate at a certain frequency, so we cannot see them. But if we're able, if we're at that same frequency or we're somehow elevated to a frequency near it, we're probably able to see them. And that could be how they are bypassing, walking amongst us almost in a way, is just, often a different frequency. It's just their phase, they're not in the same phase as we are. And,
Right.
Yeah. Wow. Really cool. Really cool. Now, okay. More. Let's hit some more. Let's talk about like the fairy kind of, the typical wings and fairies. Can you tell us anything about that?
The
Or pixies or
like pixies and
Yeah.
Okay, so like a Tinkerbell kind of fairy.
Yeah, let's go there. I know my daughter would be interested in that, so why not?
So there's all different types of fae that actually have the little cute wings, and they're described as like the pretty little miniature humans. And those, from my understanding, I don't study those as much because they're not as interesting to me. Sorry.
Hey, fair enough. Fair enough.
But they're typically associated with like flowers. So I remember that the bluebells are a smaller fae.
Okay.
And they do have the wings. They typically emit like a fainter bluish glow.
Mm-hmm.
But they're mean little things. They're not kind. They're one of the saucier little sprites.
Okay.
And I'm trying to think if there was another one. I remember for some reason the bluebell stands out to me, and it's probably because of their blue glow. And I thought, well, that would probably be pretty to see.
And like, could they be mistaken as like orbs, like blue orbs in the forest?
I think they could. And I think that so do you remember in the 90s when we were seeing the rods?
Yeah. I can't believe you brought that up. Like I have not thought of the rods until like just over a week ago, and I started talking with another. I had a show and we started talking about the rods. Yes.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So I don't wonder if some of those rods weren't fae. And I had a friend. Okay, so I had a friend who I think he encountered fae not far from me here in Texas, in North Texas. And he had a friend that owned a pretty large chunk of property. And this guy had a lot of just odd things happen. And my friend didn't go into detail about what the odd things were, but he's into the spooky stuff like I am. And he said, this guy was telling me all this weird, stuff that was happening on his property. So I would go out and I walked around with him. And he said, I was walking around filming with my camera, and this bug came at me, and he said, I thought it was a a moth, but it was daytime, you know.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's weird, obviously, for a moth to be attacking a person in the day.
Yeah.
And he filmed it because he was, dodging it and kind of batting at it. And because it was odd, he played it back later and he was slowing it down and it looked like a rod. It didn't look like a moth, it looked like a rod.
Really?
And he's convinced it was a fae. But on this same property, this friend of his ended up selling it. And right before they closed, he went back out at night just to film and see what was going on. And he caught something, and it looks like somebody walking down the path. And at first I was like, it's just your buddy walking down the path with a headlight on, dude. But the way that this person disappears is weird. So they appear suddenly, just suddenly. And I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe they, because it's a headlamp, but instead of shining out, it's shining straight down on their face. So their face is illuminated here. And you can kind of see the upper part of their body.
Okay.
And they're walking. Suddenly they're there. They're walking. And then they turn slightly. And you can faintly make the outline of the trees out. Like they're clearly turning into the trees off the path. And then they just close up like this. Like the light around them just, instead of a light blinking out from top down, it closes from the bottom like this, like they're stepping into something that's closing around them.
Really?
And it is and I played that video back in slow motion, back and forth, watching that, trying to figure out, because I'm thinking logically, like what did they step into foliage? Did they, what did they do? Like it almost looks like a sleeping bag zipping up. It was the strangest thing. So I'm thinking maybe that was a fae, maybe stepping into
some sort of portal, like
their
stepping
portal.
through some sort of, yes.
And I really hate to use the word portal because it sounds nuts. That I can't.
We use it all the time. Yeah, I use that all the time here on the show. So no worries. Yeah, portal is something that is very, very common here. We use that all the time. It was I actually had a when I was on a previous podcast, we had our second episode. This gentleman talked about a Sasquatch with a large stick banging on a tree. He saw it, and by doing it, the tree opened up, and the Sasquatch stepped through into like a portal. It was, like the wood knocks. He was saying that the wood knock was him actually activating the tree and stepping through. That's
interesting. I haven't heard that before. That
was the first time I ever heard of that, and I have not been able to get a hold of that guest since. He's kind of disappeared a little bit. So, but really interesting, to actually see that. You're sitting there watching this, and he says that the Sasquatch was looking up at this ridge because there was people walking on this ridge, and it was keeping an eye on them, and it didn't see him. And he sat there and watched it do what it did.
That's interesting.
Yes, really, really interesting. So you said you had a bunch of experiences. Well, actually, let's see. Is there any other fae that we want to talk about today? Is there anything else that you know of? Anything interesting? Well, I know you know a lot, but let's actually let's not move on from that yet. Let's go into that a little bit further.
Oh, I'm just trying to think.
And I know the fae is very alive and well. Like it kind of like, I almost feel like it originated, and I'm not saying that I know this, but more from like Europe or the UK or Scotland kind of thing. It seems to be heavier there, or at least the lore does.
Yeah, and that's where most of my knowledge of it is from. So, like the UK and Ireland, I know a little bit of Scandinavian lore. I was going to talk about I know them as tomte. Which I believe is Swedish. They're also known as Nisse or Nisse. And they're the gnomes. So you think of like the traveling gnome, right? From Travelocity, those little guys.
Yes.
And they have quite a reputation. And they typically are helpful,
Okay.
and they like the countryside. They like homes and barnyards, especially like farms, right? They like farms, and they can be very helpful on the farm. They are known to do things and, you know, tend to the animals, make sure that like predators aren't coming out on the farm, that there's no diseases happening on the farm. Like they take care of the farm, but they expect an offering, you know,
Okay.
a daily offering or a weekly, you know, whatever the agreement is, whatever, you know, you
Yeah.
come to terms with them. Um, you give them the offering and they make sure that everything runs smoothly on your farm and there's nothing bad happening. And I remember reading a story about a farmer who accidentally, not, he was not doing this on purpose, but he just forgot. He forgot to do his, you know, weekly offering or whatever the agreement was. He forgot to leave it in the pasture, the barn, or wherever it was that he would do this. And the tomte got mad. It got mad that, and it was offended. And he came out to his barn the next morning, and every single animal in the barn had been killed.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they're vengeful, and that's what I mean. Like they're sticklers. Like you make an agreement, you better hold to it. They are not nice. They can be very not nice at all.
No, definitely. It sounded very helpful. I was like, okay, well, this is good, and and then I met, you had said not to make any deals and not leave stuff out for them, and it appears that someone has, and this is an agreement
Better
that they
keep it up.
have.
If they think you're in an agreement, you better keep that up.
You better keep that up. Yeah, there's a lot of stories of like little people or like a lot of lore throughout the world. It's very unique. Like here in Mexico, one of the ones that are named are called the Aluches, and
Mhm.
the Aluches are the story of how they're actually created is kind of like a homunculus, where you actually mold and create this creature, kind of like a golem, and then you offer it blood and what else there is, and you pray to it like for 9 days, and after 9 days it comes to life, and it is like this protector of your land and of your family as
Well,
well.
it
So
really is like a golem then. I mean,
yes,
it's a oh gosh, not an egregore, a tulpa. It's a tulpa for sure because you're praying to make it come into reality.
yes, I agree.
Yeah.
It's very unique. Now I don't know, like, and that kind of got lumped in with the Alushas, but there's some people don't agree with that. They think the Alushas are, like these, exactly like you're saying, like these fae, and these little people, and it's really unique. They're kind of described as cherub looking, and like plump little bodies, and kind of look like children, and they'll sit there and watch you. My father-in-law, he has some land, and he has a gentleman that helps him work on the land, and that gentleman has told me that he has seen some of these Alushas, and it looked like a little boy, and it was peeping its head out behind a tree and looking at him, but little, like maybe 2 feet tall, like you were saying, that one that you had seen.
Hopefully it didn't look menacing like mine did.
No, it didn't. No, he said it looked more intrigued or curious, and here it is kind of like the thing that you gift them candy, or you put out an offering for them. It's kind of that seems to be the thing, and yeah, there's a lot of stories about that, and the Alushas here, and leaving out a plate for them to appease them.
Yeah, I mean that's good if you need to do that, if there's a lot of havoc being wrought on your farm, or if you're clearing a path, let's say through the forest, and you know that they're inhabiting this particular area, maybe you do that so that they don't, mess with your people while they're doing the path clearing.
Yeah.
uh, but I wouldn't make it a habit. to-
No, I would not either. I would not either. And it's funny you say that kind of thing, because when they were building this bridge, they were building a bridge in Quintana Roo, here, like, because I live here in Mexico, and they were building this bridge, and the bridge would, like, this one pylon would not hold, and they were told that they need to build a house on there for the Fey folk. So they put a
Mhm.
little house on it, and after they did that, no problems. It was like this pylon, this pillar held, and it was never any issues after that.
See,
Mm-hmm.
gotta
Mm-hmm.
keep them happy. Gotta keep them.
There's
All they wanted was a house. If that's all they want, build them a house.
yeah, there's definitely something to this. There's more to it than just these stories. When something is not working and you're told to do this, like build this house for the little people, and then all of a sudden there's no problems. Well, there's got to be there has to be something with that.
I agree. And I think it's Greenland. I'm pretty sure it's Greenland where they believe very strongly in Fae.
Okay.
And to the point where, they have people that communicate with them. And I remember reading an article that there's this large rock. They were building a road of some kind. And there was this boulder that had been there for a number of years. And this person who communicates, they hired them to come out and make sure everything was great. And they're like, oh, no, there's all these fae that live in this particular boulder. This is what they call home, and you can't move it. You better go around it, because if you destroy this or if you move it, you're going to make them angry and it's not going to be good. They built the entire road around the rock to not upset, the fae.
I have heard this story. I believe it was Iceland.
Oh, Iceland.
And yes, and it has to do with the elves. It's
there we go.
They're very strong with elves. Yes,
it's a species of fae for sure.
Yeah, I have heard that story as well. It's crazy. Like we say it's crazy, but it's not. This is what we deal with. These are the things that are truly out there that many people just don't pay attention to or don't realize that that they are out there.
I think that they are. I mean, some of it is okay. So some of it might be self-fulfilling prophecy, like I think with, witchcraft, I do believe in it, but I also believe that, a good chunk of it is spicy psychology. You tell somebody, I'm going to curse you, like you did me wrong. Expect something bad in the next week. Everything that goes wrong, if they're the type of person to be subliminally, subjected to that would take, they'll self-fulfill.
I agree. I believe it's kind of like you manifest it. You actually are creating the curse.
Mm-hmm.
There was one guy, he was on like TikTok, and he was like, I don't believe in witchcraft, and I don't believe I can ever be cursed. And he's like, I dare every witch out there to try to curse me. Yeah. And he's like, because I don't believe in it. And there was, I would say, hundreds, if not thousands, trying to curse this guy. But he's like, I don't believe in you. I don't believe in it. And nothing ever happened to him that, for the time that it was at least a year or even more than that, nothing ever happened to him. There was nothing ever bad or anything. And I believe it is because, you have to be able to give it power. To a certain point, I do believe that there's other sides to things, but to a certain point, if you believe it in, I don't want to say buy into it because that sounds terrible, but if you give it the energy or the power,
right,
then you are allowing it in. It's kind of like inviting. It's kind of like what you're saying. You invite the, if you have your welcome mat out, you're inviting it in to do you harm, mm-hmm. or to do something into, you've made this covenant, this agreement with it, and right. It's but if you're like, no, I don't contract with you, I don't have this covenant with you, then you're canceling it. It's not able to.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. But I also agree, like with the energies, right, and the vibrations, that if you have enough negative energy focused at you, something's probably going to happen. Now, is it going to manifest externally? Like, are you going to be in a car accident or something immediately? Maybe not. But who's to say that this poor guy doesn't have something growing internally that he's unaware of currently? If you have that much negative energy focused directly at you, I wouldn't invite that in either. True. Now, whether you believe it or not, I wouldn't roll the dice on that.
No, I do agree with you. That's something I don't want to mess with. Even if you don't believe in it, I would still just not want to take that chance. Exactly. Oh, fantastic. So, Monica, what else is out there?
So much. There's so much.
I agree.
I'm trying
Well,
to think. I've had so many things happen. It's hard for me to like just pluck one or two
pull it
out.
up. Well, what about yourself though? You said when you were growing up, you had some incidents, some occurrences.
So
Tell.
yeah, so one of the earlier ones that I recall, we lived in this, I called it the cottage, it was a condo. I remember I was sleeping in my parents' room and they were in the living room. And the light on the wall, obviously there were shadows being projected. And I remember the shadows were moving. They were changing shape and moving
Me?
and making different things. Like at one point it was a tree and then it changed into a lady in a rocking chair and the rocking chair started rocking and then it changed into something else. And I remember I thought, yeah, no, I'm leaving. I remember thinking Bruja. And then I popped up and took off down the hallway. And I used to hide on the washer and dryer in the hallway because this was in the 70s. We had the, folding doors
Folding
that would,
doors.
yeah. And I remember hopping up there and really quietly closing the folding doors because I didn't want to get in trouble for being awake.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember sitting there for a while listening to my parents watching MASH on TV. And, my father eventually found me and I like wouldn't go back into the bedroom. And I think I fell asleep on the couch with them. And, I can't remember after that. So that's one of the earlier instances that I had. I recall when I was okay, so growing up, we used to spend our summers in at the time, I don't know that it is anymore. I haven't been there in ages, but it was a pretty remote corner of Southwest Oregon.
Okay.
And we used to spend our summers with my uncle and my cousins there. And this property was in a valley. So there were two mountains that came together, and the property was in that little valley.
Okay.
And there was a creek that ran through it. And my uncle owned this little chunk of land, and he and my grandfather built this bridge, and my grandfather owned some land on the other side of the bridge. And there were dairy farms around us. And in no particular order, there was one night when I was coming out, it was maybe 1 a.m. It was myself and two of my cousins. We were making a ton of noise. I'm surprised my uncle didn't yell at us, but we were giggling and making noise like kids do. And we came busting out of the front door just laughing. And my youngest cousin got about halfway down the steps and I got just onto the front porch and we heard the most ungodly howl coming from the dairy farm it would have been to the east. And at first I thought it was a cow and then I thought it was a dog and then I didn't know what it was. And I remember thinking, Bigfoot, werewolf, what is that? I don't know. Because I want to say I was like 16 at the time. I was,
Yeah, I was gonna ask how old were you?
yeah,
Yeah.
I was pretty old to be thinking those things, but I mean, I believe fully in Bigfoot.
Yeah.
I didn't believe in werewolves at that time. I do now. But well, maybe not werewolves, but Dogman.
Yeah.
And it lasted because it started off like it started off like a cow mooing, but then it ended in like oh, I mean, it ended in like a howl and it lasted a long time. And I remember the hair, that's the first time in my life that all the hair on my neck and my head just stood up. And
Really?
I thought, because it was like down at the creek, which is a ways away on the neighboring dairy farm.
Yeah.
And it was so loud. I thought whatever that is has got to be huge because those are incredible lungs to be broadcasting that loudly from that distance, through the trees, across the fields, and
Jeez.
towards us.
Yeah, exactly.
And my cousin that had run down the walkway, she froze. My cousin behind me froze. And I turned and looked at my cousin because she lived there. What, have you heard this before? She looked at me and she said, I have no idea what that is. I've never heard that before. And my younger cousin, who was, had run off, she came running back, and we came inside. And I remember they never locked their doors. I made them lock their doors at night. But then I also remember thinking that door isn't stopping whatever that was, because that
Right.
was huge. That was huge. And the bedroom that we slept in had this giant picture window and no curtains because we're in the middle of nowhere. And I remember thinking, again, just like the little creepy dude,
Yeah.
I'm going to see something like pop up in this dang window in the middle of this.
Something's going to be staring at me through this big window.
Yeah. And that definitely terrified me. There was a time where something had followed me. So my other cousin, we used to run down to the bridge and back. So we used to run on the highway. It was the only paved road, right? It was a 2-lane blacktop.
Yeah.
And we ran to this culvert. We called it the bridge because we knew it was a mile there and a mile back. So we could, clock our distance.
Yeah.
And I am not I did track and field, but I wasn't a distance runner. I did field, and she was a distance runner. So she could outrun me like gangbusters. Plus, I grew up in a house with smokers, where they'd hotbox you.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure my lungs never fully developed from that. So anyway, she could outrun me easily. Well, we had run down. We were about halfway back. I'm like, I've got stitches in my side. I can barely move. And she's walking with me when we notice that, there's the mountain here, we're in a valley.
Yeah.
So to our left, there's, a kind of a little bit of a barbed wire fence and then some trees. And then it gets thicker as it goes up the hillside. And to our right is nothing. It's just a slope down to the creek.
Okay.
And we're walking on the side of the road, and I noticed that there's something following us, like in the tree line where we can't see it. It's keeping pace with us. So we're talking and walking, and we both notice it, and we stop, and it takes a few steps and stops. And then we start walking again, and it starts following us, and we stop, and it stops. And my cousin immediately thinks it's a bear. And she's like, "Oh my God, it's a bear." And she just takes off, leaves me to be mauled by this bear, right? This, what she thinks is a bear. And I take off too. Like, I was like 15 maybe.
Yeah.
And not knowing, predator prey response, I, like a fool, tried to run. I already had stitches on my side. I made it like 20 feet. I had to stop. Well, this thing, kept pace with me the whole time. She took off. It didn't follow her. It stayed with me, and it stayed out of sight, pacing with us or with me. And, she must have made it back. I can hear my uncle, because we're in a valley. He starts whistling, screaming for me. He probably thinks I'm, bear bait on the side of the road,
Yeah, exactly.
And, eventually I make it back. They couldn't have been too concerned, because it's not like anybody showed up to, find my body. But this thing eventually took off. I can't remember, to be honest, if it went back up into the mountain or if it just stopped walking beside me. But it eventually stopped following me. And there was another incident when we were a lot younger. I want to say we were probably like 9 or 10, 8, 9, 10, somewhere in there. We were on a friend's property down the road. So we were maybe 5 miles away. And they had a pretty sizable chunk of land. They had acreage. And we were literally like in the back 40. And we were nestled up on the tree line. They had some split logs for the winter. They had them piled up in a nice, pile. And we thought it was fun to crawl on the top of the pile and slide down the pile. It was entertainment for us. And I remember I was at the top of the pile, and I had either just injured my foot or I was about to injure my foot.
Okay.
But we could hear something coming up through the trees towards us, because there were some thicker trees, right up behind us. And we could hear the steps coming towards us. And something was breathing heavy, and I want to say it was grunting or growling, and the trees started shaking. And all the other kids screamed and ran. They were screaming bear. took off, left me. I'm on the top of this wood pile. I slide down with injured foot. I can't run as it is. Now I got an injured foot to boot. I'm thinking I'm gonna get, this is it. This is because we were in the back 40. It takes a minute to get back to the house, and we had to duck under a barbed wire fence to get there. And I remember running, and I finally get to the fence, and I'm too scared to look back. And the whole time I'm running to the fence, I'm thinking I'm gonna, this bear's gonna, because I'm thinking
someone's gonna grab you.
Yeah, and of course nothing happened. But now, looking back on these things, like a bear wouldn't keep pace with me in the woods. A bear would have bluff charged me. It would have come down and sniffed me. A bear isn't going to grab trees and shake them.
I agree.
A bear would have 100% ran down at least one of the kids screaming and running.
Yes. Yeah,
so yeah. And there's some other things that happened in that area when we were kids. I had something definitely growl at us while we were walking across the bridge at night from my grandfather's property over to my uncle's. The road leading to the bridge there was about a 3-foot slope down to the floor of the forest.
Okay.
And we were almost to the bridge, and we heard, obviously, there's animals in the woods. We hear things walking around in there.
Yeah.
But we heard a very guttural growl, and a loud and deep come from the direction that the howl came from later on. But that sound wasn't from the forest floor, like something on all fours on the ground. It was level with us while we were standing on the road. And of course, everybody again takes off, leaves my brother and I to be murdered. We were left behind a lot. But again, these things, whatever these things were, they had the opportunity to 100% attack me or any one of us in the group, and that never happened. So I don't know what to think of that, because I don't think that again, these things, in my opinion, are animals, whatever they are. Dog, man, Bigfoot, they're animals.
And they are watching you.
They are. They are.
That is some crazy stories, and I really appreciate this conversation, Monica. It was fantastic. So thank you so much for giving us a little bit of some information on some Fae, and then also in your experiences as well. It was fantastic. I really want to say thank you for coming on.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
And one last time, where can everybody find you?
So you can find me on YouTube at Our Paranormal World, and there are a few Our Paranormal World channels. So in the search bar, if you type in at Monica's Paranormal World, you will be taken to my channel.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram as well.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I'm on all of them as well, and I'm trying to be more active on Instagram because I think it's a little bit of a better platform, but I'm so used to Facebook. It's just so easy to me. And then I'm like, I really got to get more active on Instagram though.
See, Instagram, I use it for my personal account mostly, but it's so easy to make those shorts, like those little 90-second reels.
Yes. I agree. Well, thank you so much, Monica. And, I hope you have a fantastic evening.
Awesome. Thank you, Rye.
Thanks. All right, everyone. That was Monica with some, a little bit of an introduction into the Fae and some stories. Those red caps. Something about the red caps that really, got to her and to me as well. That is creepy. And then, the movie Legend. If you have not seen that, I highly recommend to watch that movie Legend. And I think that's something I'm going to pull up. I'm not going to watch with my daughter because I don't think she's ready for it yet, because it is a little creepy. It's a great show, but it's a little creepy as well. So that was great. Want to say thank you to everyone who's come out, listened, watched, shared the show, and is a member. Thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. And with that, everyone, I want to say keep your curiosity wandering, keep the light lit, and always find your way home.
look forward to our next adventure together as we navigate the mysteries that lie ahead. Until our paths cross again, keep your curiosity wandering, keep the light lit, and always find your way home.